my name is Grete Kivi. I'm Senior Employer Branding Manager at JetBrains, and today I'm going to walk you through for the next 30-ish minutes on 7 lessons from building employer branding from the ground up. Or an alternative longer title could have also been everything that's been rattling around my head for the last 4 months, finally organized into something that just doesn't live in my notes app. But I think the first option was a bit better and more concise version. So, but why am I even here talking about this topic? Who is this woman there? So, I'm the first employer branding hire at JetBrains, currently the only employer branding hire at JetBrains. And I've been with the company roughly for 5 months, so hitting my 5-month mark next week. But previously, I was building up a little over 3 years, global employer branding function at Bolt. It sounds super messy, but there was a team of 2. So I'm representing 50% of the team. And I come from a marketing background, so how I approach employer branding is very much impacted from my previous career. So from my CV, you can find everything from working in big corporations, working as a freelancer, and before I joined Bolt, I was working in a tiny startup of 10 people with 0 revenue. So there is everything. And I'm originally from Estonia, currently based in the Netherlands. And if a couple of slides ago you went, Jet, what? Don't worry, I was the same way roughly 6 months ago. But anyways, JetBrains is a super techy company, essentially engineers building tools for other engineers to deliver great software. And it's roughly used by 50 million developers. And if you open up a Fortune Global Top 100 list, roughly 90% of the companies there are using JetBrains. If you work in the recruitment space and you've ever had to hire for Android developer or Kotlin developer, then Kotlin is the programming language used for Android, which is owned and developed by JetBrains, for example. I did not know that before I joined the company, so no worries. So the scale is we have 2,800 people roughly on board globally across 14 locations. So we have something in China, something in the US, but the majority of the hiring is happening in Europe. And to even narrow it down a bit more, most of the hiring happens across 6 locations, and Amsterdam is our HQ. Small disclaimer before we go into the next presentation is, as mentioned, I'm coming from Bolt and now working at JetBrains. These both are brands that, like the overall company brand, is still developing, and it's both of our companies that are still going through this fast scale-paced headcount growth. And I know that everything that I will say here today is not a one-size-fits-all formula. So you can easily pick and choose whatever resonates with you the most. It's not one source of truth, because I understand employer branding teams are very different. Some have more resources, some have more headcount, some are more constrained by their legacy brand, how overall the brand is running, and some have more freedom to do things. So anyway, just a small disclaimer, pick and choose what resonates with you the most. But essentially, I'm going to walk you through whatever I've been thinking about actively last 5 months. The first lesson is when you're building employer branding ground up, and I think that is the most important lesson to take away. So if you forget the next 6 points I'm going to follow and take that one, you're good to go. You can do everything, but you can't do it all at once. If you're building employer branding or you're just starting to reshape it again, you have to have ruthless prioritization and sequencing. And you first have to cover your bases. So right now, the questions that I'm personally tackling with is, what is urgent? What is actually burning? What is something super nice to have that I could do, like JetBrains' employer brand 2.0 or 3.0? And what is something that if I don't kick off this project today, it will actually stop my growth from 6 to 12 months from this point on today. To make the examples a little bit more concrete, for example, you need to have a unified way how you are talking about you as a company, as an employer to the external world. So quite a basic thing to think about, right? Something that you can start developing your external assets based on, something that recruiters are all aligned, how you're talking about the company, or even if your people go and speak on different conferences, they're saying the same things. We as a company are XYZ. We are doing XYZ. The type of people who thrive here are XYZ. And in an employer branding space, that is often known as the EVP, or employer value proposition. Why I'm not on purpose using that term is I often see that the conversation around building up EVP becomes this like super inflated, massive, big project where teams are just stuck in like running those super in-depth interviews, which are not bad. Then they like take a while to analyze them. Then there's like 20 different stakeholders who want to have their say, who want to get alignment. And then what happens is teams get stuck in this phase, and while they should be actually building, launching, and testing things out the market, they're just still covering the bases. So my main thing is don't overcomplicate this process. And bringing an example from Bolt, I mentioned I was with the company for roughly 3 years. A year before me, the first employer branding hire was made, and a year before that, a small group came together to really figure out how should they start presenting Bolt to the external channels. So roughly 5 years from today, Bolt kicked off its first employer branding initiatives. And the work group who came together, employer branding is also a relatively new thing in Estonia. They were comms and branding people. They had no concept of EVP. They just knew that, hey, we need to have some key messages, some key narratives that we can use easily and put out into the world. They put together a 2-pager that was signed off by the CEO, and then they started to run with. And everything that from that point forward to until today, in the last 5 years that you've seen that Bolt's employer branding team has put out, from socials, careers page, those massive campaigns, is still based on that 2-pager. And the same thing I did at JetBrains is during my first onboarding month, I had 25 one-on-one meetings with different stakeholders. I turned those onboarding meetings into like mini research things. I read everything I could get my hands on, internal materials, listened to some of our CEOs talk, and I put together a similar format. That was 1 month in. Then I went to our director of talent, our VP of people, CEO, said, this is what I'm proposing, are you saying yes to it? It was done, and I kicked off the rest of the project. So don't get stuck if you're just starting out. Side note, if you're working in a more mature team, you can afford to put into the time and effort, but if you're just starting out, you need to start testing. The next thing is your careers page actually good enough? So if you're putting all this effort into like, get this external talent, then they come to your web page, and then you lose the leads. Careers page should really operate as this one source of truth, where the talent lands, they can read, they can learn, they can really imagine what my life would be if I joined XYZ company, but it should also carry a very different purpose as well. It should repel the talent who is not a fit for you. Because the reality is you're not gonna hire everyone. You're gonna figure out if they're a culture fit. And you know, it's better for your recruitment team if the talent realizes beforehand, you know what, I don't think that's a company for me. So your careers page has to carry that purpose as well. To be honest, most of your external communication should at some point carry this purpose as well. And for example, yet again, bringing examples from very different approaches. When I joined Bolt, the careers page wasn't anything fancy, especially if you go and compare what is out there now. It didn't come even close. But it was good enough. So we could take 12 months to do like a complete overhaul of the careers page, launch like gazillion hundred sub-pages, new photography, whatever. When I joined JetBrains, and you can go and check it out right now as well, it's a very, very minimalistic page. It just has perks and join us. Or not even perks, I'm sorry. It has our application process. So I knew that if I want to launch external activities, it doesn't make sense to go live if I don't have anywhere for the talent to land. And I'm sequencing out the careers page. At one point, I want this to be this massive portal, but I'm gonna go out with some of the most critical things in Q1, so that in Q1 I could start doing my external activations. And then later on, I'm gonna sequence out the whole careers page rehaul. And then the third thing that I'm right now actively thinking about, if I want to activate the market, stakeholder comes to me, hey, we're really struggling to hire engineers in Germany. Grete, can you do something about it? Today, my answer is no. But I want to kind of move away from it, that I wouldn't be constantly stuck in a development cycle, but I could really start building for impact. So These are the 3 things that I'm right now working on. Put your hand up if you've ever had a stakeholder come to you and is like, hey, we should chat, I have so many ideas about employer branding. Yes, that happens to me every other week. And sometimes I get even sent things that I did in my previous company saying like, I don't know if you've seen it, but Bolt is doing an excellent job. And I'm like, yes, that was my project. But like I'm managing these conversations every week. And I have this actually written out in like proper way. And I'm actually managing my stakeholders saying like, hey, for the next 6 months, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z. Let's figure out where we can sequence your issue, but I can move forward before I have that covered. That was my longest slide. Next ones are gonna be significantly faster. So the next thing is you need to, especially if you're starting out, you need to figure out where the recruitment team, the recruiters can carry the heavy weight and where you actually need to jump in. And as an employer branding lead, you need to manage those conversations. So on paper, Bolt and JetBrains look fairly similar. Both are tech companies, both are based in the EU. The headcount is roughly the same, so we're not talking that one is 100 people and the other one is 10,000 people. Both have a handful of relocation hubs or growth hubs, and both actively relocate talent. Bolt is very, very active, or big part of the communication, or one of the big communication pillars is relocation. Now the question is, should JetBrains also start doing relocation communication? And the answer is no. But why? And now we come back to the hiring strategy. Bolt's HQ is based in Estonia, in Tallinn. So Estonia is super tiny. There's 1.3 million of us. So even though we have a very thriving tech scene, the supply just isn't there to fit the demands of Bolt as an employer. And then the second part is that our hiring strategy back at Bolt said that all senior global talents need to be based in Tallinn. But although we have fabulous summers in Estonia, selling cold, -20 degrees, Nordic winter, without any sunlight, next to a very aggressive neighbor in a very turbulent geopolitical times, is not an easy sell, especially if you need to do it in volume. So this is where actually employer branding team can jump in and say like, hey, let us build up different narratives, let us carry the heavyweight. At JetBrains, we are selling relocation to Amsterdam, Berlin, and Munich. And we're not doing it in high volume because the talent pool is already there. So this is something that recruiters can manage themselves. Yes, I can create some supportive assets, but I'm not, I don't have to put as much effort into it. So this is what I mean, like you need to figure out with your recruitment team is where they are actually struggling and what they can handle on their own. Good employer branding needs investment. You need to have money to do employer branding well. And I know this, some people go like, but that is true. The reality is that good marketing costs money, producing good assets costs money, distributing these assets costs money, hiring good talent to your team costs money, going to events costs money, and I also consult, like as a freelancer, some of employer branding teams, and in some cases I've actually told people right in front, is like, I don't see that you have the internal commitment to actually invest into employer branding, so I don't think you're actually ready today to launch your employer branding efforts. And I'm all for like scrappy, smart solutions. I'm also utilizing them, but at the end of the day, your impact comes from investing money, because employer branding is branding. And you have to optimize for reach, and this is like a very basic brand theory, how brands grow. So brands need reach to grow. Consumers often know little about some brands and almost nothing about most brands. And you can switch it out to employer branding, where the sell is even trickier. They might not even know you as a consumer brand, and they don't definitely know you as an employer brand. And familiarity breeds liking. So the more people see you, the more they will make this connection that they like you as a brand. And we all know that people want to apply for companies that they actually know. If you have ever been in a position where you've launched a brand in a new market where you have very, very little presence, you realize quite quickly that if people don't know you, they will not apply to you. And you need to have repeatable visibility among your target audience to get to this part. So that means the top of the funnel is important, and this is why you do need the money. Yeah, and next one is how you do things actually matters. And you can always do things in three ways. You can do them poorly, you can do them in a just fine way, or you can be exceptionally good at what you do. And sometimes, we come back to the part where you need to have this prioritization and sequencing. To be honest, most likely you will not be able to do everything in an excellent way. You need to cut corners sometimes, although that's not something I like to say, but sometimes you need to choose what is good enough and what has to be excellent. But why it matters is, especially if you're starting out or if I'm talking to different teams, what they're saying to me is many teams actually struggle with activating their audience via ads. And then I start digging around a bit. They're like, oh, Grete, but we tried ads and it didn't work. Either we got 0 leads or we got too many relevant leads and we never want to do this again. And then I start asking questions well, how do you know that your creative was good enough? Like the photos, the videos that you used, were they actually a standout assets or were they just like tapestry like every other company is putting out there? Then something else that teams love to do is they're like, oh, we need to go to this new market and we need to hire a gazillion million people and we're just gonna go and start saying those ads like, join us as a software engineer. And I'm like, yeah, but they don't know you. Why should a talent who is already deeply engaged in their current workplace, who is well paid, who's never heard of you, why should they click on this ad and then join you? Because you need to activate the market first with those awareness ads. And in the beginning, if you start out, your budget needs to be disproportionately towards those employer branding awareness ads. A little bit later on, you can go in with those sales messages. So then my question is, okay, did you even test different formats? Did you test different copy? How did you even pick out the channel that you choose? Did you actually figure out different parts of how to target properly? And people say oh yeah, we used Meta and Facebook. And I'm like, okay, in some cases it might be good, but what if LinkedIn would have been a better match for you? Or they just do something, kick off one-time initiative, it didn't work, so we must decide it failed. But then if you start digging deeper, turns out that very little effort was actually put into it to make it work. So for example, at Bolt, we opened up a new ads channel, LinkedIn, and we said that for the next 6 months, we're going to learn everything we get to learn about LinkedIn. We're going to test as many different formats, as many different targeting ways, as many different copies as possible, so that by the end of 6 months, we can say either we cracked it, we figured out what works, or we can say very confidently, it did not work for us. Yeah. So next up is define where you want to grow. Again, that comes back to prioritization and sequencing. Employer branding is not a game of fairness. I understand that all of the stakeholders that you're working with, their hiring pains are real. If they cannot hire a good talent to their team, that pain point is real. But as an employer branding manager, you cannot just overstretch your resources, overstretch your budget, because that dilutes impact. For example, at JetBrains, what I'm thinking, I show right now that we have 14 hubs. We are actively hiring across all of these 14 hubs. But then my next follow-up question is okay, there's one me, there's limited budget, 14 is out of the question. I go to my director of talent, I'm asking okay, where is majority of the hiring taking place? Okay, it's 6 hubs, so I already scratched out 8. With 8, I'm not gonna deal, that might be employer branding 5.0, or when I have a team of 10, I might figure it out later, right? And then my next question is okay, out of those 6 hubs, where do you actually need support? Are there some hubs that recruiters can take care of completely on their own, or is there somewhere you're struggling with? Okay, it turns out of those 6, 4 need critical attention. My next question is okay, what is the typical talent profile you hire across these locations? Are you hiring across all departments we have? Or maybe let's say 70% of the hires are only engineering hires. Okay, turns out 70% of the hires are only engineering hires. So my budget, my focus, my resources will go to 4 hubs and only engineering hires, and this is what I'm going to do. And for the rest of the stakeholders, I will have to just say, I'm sorry, but it's a no for me. And bringing an example from Bolt. I was with the company maybe a month or 2. We launched our very, very big first global campaign, and I was leading all the paid media part of distributing that campaign. At that point, Bolt was roughly hiring locally from 30 different countries. And then I went to a recruitment team, I was like, okay, can you brief me, like, where do you want me to distribute this campaign in? They came back with a list of 15 countries, and I thought, excellent, it's already half of it, we can do it. Today, I would go in and say, like, why 15? Why are you running a campaign in Kenya if after the 6 to 8 weeks of once you've activated campaign, there are 0 follow-up activities to anything that's going to happen in Kenya? So that is an automatic no. If you have no plan how to activate the same target audience over the next 6 to 12 months, that's a one-off activity, you don't have time for it. Or for example, some of the conversations that I'm right now having is we have one country where we're mostly hiring for back office talent, so HR, legal, finance, blah, blah, blah. A very enthusiastic stakeholder came to pitch to me. He's like, oh my goodness, there's going to be this amazing women in tech event. The whole media is going to be there. All the best companies in the market are going to be there. We have to be there. And I'm like, okay, but we're not hiring any tech talent from this market. And I have nothing planned for the tech talent for the next 6 to 12 months. Even the opportunity is good, it's a no from my table. And if you're thinking about launching your social channels, then I would really, really, really advise choose one channel where your talent is active and do it well. And by doing it well, I mean, don't post some boring creatives. And here's one rule: if it's boring to write, it will be boring to read, and people will not engage with it. So like, literally, like if you're writing, it's like, oh my goodness, this sounds so corporate, I can't believe someone would read it. And then you push publish, like that's a no. So anyway, like do good creatives. This is what will actually set you apart from the market. And to be honest, this is the laziest type of marketing advice out there. Is like, yeah, go to all 4 different channels and just like purpose the same content, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but people are consuming content in very, very different ways. Like if you go to TikTok, you are consuming the content very differently if you do it on LinkedIn, or maybe you're doing it on Substack, or maybe you're doing it on Instagram. So you have to figure out the ways that how are people actually consuming content. Then you take it as your goal. It has to be great content that I publish. And then you keep testing and testing and testing until you figure out you have good engagement rates. So it's not just like you have 2 likes and 1 comment, but you figure out ways that you actually have the potential to go viral. I'm not saying every post has to go viral, but you know something that you can really tell, like, people like this. And you will not open up any other channel before you figure out how to do one well. And once you launch any sort of initiatives, this is the trickiest part, you have to stick with it. Because building awareness, changing perception, getting this repeatable visibility among your target audience takes time. You can't be switching up your activations every 6 to 3 months. Okay, let's say you can't do it. There's like always like those, those cases where like there's this one exception. But as a rule, you can't keep switching it up because you will not see results. You will not have time enough to learn what worked, what didn't work. And the 7th and the final part is figure out where is your organic growth coming from, and then ride the wave. For example, now that I'm starting out with JetBrains, it's fairly easy. Like, I haven't launched anything yet, so everywhere I see spikes for my careers page just like popping up, I know that that thing is already organically going. For example, our 2nd top source to our careers page is LinkedIn. So that's already a good indication for me that I'm not going to go into Instagram, I'm not going to go into TikTok, the talent is already on LinkedIn. How can I activate LinkedIn? Our social bit is going to follow a little bit later, but for example, I kicked off our employee advocacy program that is only focused on LinkedIn, although our own people are really, really active on X, but in the best kind of way. I don't care about X right now because LinkedIn is actually giving me the results that I want, so I'm gonna ride this wave. Or maybe you can see that there's like a job board that is like sending tons of traffic by default to your careers page. Or maybe there's like a blog that has accidentally written about you and it's sending traffic to your careers page. Or if you're working on the product side, there might be some product pages that people like go read about your products, and then turns out they might be interested in your careers as well. Or something that I discovered at JetBrains is 8% of the visits are coming from ChatGPT. And now my question is like, okay, what can I do about it as a next step? And yet again, so if you're running like different campaigns or social activations, the question is always like, is there one format that keeps outperforming other formats? And then you just want to go ahead and repeat it again. And that was the 7 lessons. But quickly to recap, is the most important thing, especially if you're starting out, especially if you're running with limited resources, is prioritization and sequencing. You have to, as an employer branding person, put effort into the highest impact activities or the highest volume activities. But first, before you can start running somewhere fast, you really need to cover your bases. So it's your key messages, make sure your careers page is okay, and then the rest is kind of dependent on your strategy and on your current needs. And in order to do employer branding well and actually have impact, you do need investments. And because employer branding is branding, you need to optimize for activities that actually bring reach. How you do things matter. Overstretching your budget, your resources will dilute your impact. You have to step away from one-off activities, especially again if you're running with a small team. And once you launch something, stick to it enough to get the results. And make sure you spot organic growth and really ride the wave. That's it. Thank you.